take a look at my flow through worm bin. I use this style after trying several different style over the last couple of years because it's very easy to set up, very easy to maintain. It takes about 10 minutes every 2 weeks, and I get to check on every single part of my bin, make sure everything's going great. And so it's just a perfect combination of ease as well as, you know, allowing me to touch and see all my worms as much as I want to. So it starts with this just sheet of bubble wrap I leave on top. Looks like I got a couple of worms sticking to there. I leave this just so that the moisture, it does the very top doesn't dry out. That way the worms come all the way up to the top and do their thing. And you can see that they're doing that because like across the top, they come up and they leave their fresh castings here. So if I just gently scrape the top, I can see all the freshest castings. So that's really cool to see. I like that part of it. The other main feature of this type of bin is how easy it is to harvest the castings for my garden. Right now I've got a few seeds that I've thrown it over. It looks like they've germinated because it's a little bit warmer now. But I always feed here, and every time I check on it, I move it over. That way, by the time stuff gets over here, it's completely broken down and there's not much stuff left in it. It also gives it a chance to like dry out when I've got more stuff sort of stacked up. It gives a little bit more to dry out. You can see when it hasn't dried out, because I don't have very much stacked up here, it's still filled with worms, right? So this is one of the reasons why it's normally hard to pull stuff out. But once I get a few more castings ready to go, I'll have them piled up over here and this will dry out. And the worms don't like that. So they go and they leave and they come over here where more of the food is. I'm seeing more, even though, you know, there's just not as much food here, I'm seeing a lot more worms here because it's been a little bit hotter. And so there's nothing breaking down over there. So the worms are sort of migrating to where there's less food naturally, which is why you really got to make sure you stack it up. The last reason why I like this is what I'm kind of doing right now. I'm going through and I'm fluffing this up. This makes sure that there's no spots in here where there's no oxygen can get to. That's like the main reason why I'm doing it. The worms and that sewage kind of smell comes from the bacteria that thrive in oxygen-free environments. So by coming through here and fluffing it up, not only do I get the pleasure of checking on all my worms, and I'm seeing a lot more small worms than I've ever seen before. So I'm really starting to see a lot of success. These means they're the next generation of worms, and the population of my bin is going up. But not only that, but yeah, I can make sure the moisture level is right, and I'm not getting any bad smells in here. So I have this really nice worm bin. I keep mine just outside the back porch, but you know, I would have no issue keeping this inside. I just don't need to. Yeah, you can see now that I'm not at the finished place, seeing a lot more worms here. There's a good amount of finished. I'm seeing almost no bits of food. This is all finished, ready to go into the garden. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stack this up really tall on the right. That way when I check it again in 2 weeks, it'll be much drier and the worms will have migrated away and left. And so it'll be much easier to pull this out, which is sort of the final reason. It can be very difficult to like go and make sure all the worms are outside of the finished castings in some of the other systems I've used. And so just having an easy time and just grabbing some of these out and pulling the worms out is the last reason why I really like this system. So now I'm just going to sort of go through, now that I got these finished castings piled up as high as I can get them. Ooh, look at that, so many worms. These ones aren't quite as finished. This one looks pretty finished, so I'm gonna stack this up here too. Yeah, now I'm getting to the stuff I fed maybe a month ago, and so it's mostly all broken down, but it can use a little bit more, so I'm putting it here next to the finished pile. So this I'm gonna cover up. I'm gonna leave this part over here uncovered, but I'm gonna cover up everything short of that. So it stays moisture and it keeps a high worm population while everywhere else dries out. Oh wow, look at that. It's just beautiful. They're just so thick in here. I'm actually kind of surprised. I've seen a couple of shells. This is like I think this is a mango seed. So this is kind of hard for them to break down. So there's that's still in there, but that's the closest thing to food I've found in here so far, which is, I suppose, a good thing because we have quite a lot of food to feed them today. So I'm glad to see that they're hungry. They've processed what they've got, because I'm going to give them a whole bunch more. And then one of the other things I check as I go through here, so I told you I fluff it to make sure the oxygen level is right. But if there's too much water in here, it'll also make it hard for the oxygen to get down, and it'll make it hard on the worms, as well as obviously too little moisture. Which is what I intentionally do by stacking up the finished castings. So I'm also kind of checking on the moisture level. Oh yeah, so this is, now I'm going into the space where I fed last time. So this is where you're going to see the majority of the worms hanging out. Because there's fresh food here. So it's like as much worms as anything else when I'm looking through here. But in terms of what I was saying about the moisture level, I can kind of check. I'm feeling through here, and the moisture level's good. If anything, it might be a touch too moist, but it's right about where I want it to be. So there are different, interventions you can do to make it more or less moist. I just love checking out all the worms. Yeah, I can add more of the shredded cardboard bedding. That will soak up a good deal of moisture. And then if it's too dry, I can obviously just add water. So those are the two different interventions I make, which is just another way to like easily keep this at the correct environment for my worms. Wow, I did feed these guys pretty heavily last time I fed them, and I'm not seeing any food. So we're gonna feed them a whole lot today, and when we check back in them on 2 weeks, we'll see how much of that they got through. So what I do when I feed them is I leave some of the previous amount of castings, or the previous amount in here. I'll leave a like a ½ inch layer, and then I'll do a good amount of bedding. I'll do a little bit more bedding than I normally do today, just because it was, like I said, just a skosh on the wet side. And we're also going to add a lot of food today. So normally you don't have to add any water because there's a good amount of water in the food that you feed them and all like your vegetable scraps. And I'm feeding a lot of fruit today, which tend to have a lot of water. This is just my coffee from the previous week. I always grind this up and put it into the bedding. This is like a very easy food. It gives a good baseline, right? Just the coffee I drink throughout the week and the grounds from that just is enough. Like even if I don't have that many vegetable scraps or scraps from the garden, there'll always be plenty there. Next is some eggshells. I'm trying a new thing this time. They're not as ground up as I normally do. We'll see how they do, or if they don't get used. The eggshells, when ground up, are great for the worms' gizzards, but we'll see how this does. Here's my food scraps from the previous week. We were out of town recently, so some of this is just, I got an apple that just went bad while I was gone. Some carrot tops. Foods, yeah, just some various kitchen scraps. And I actually have a few more. So what I like to do when I have a good deal of food is I will cover the first layer of food with this, just to allow a layer of the worms to get through, and that way I don't have a thick layer of just, food that sort of cover each other up and make it hard for the worms to get to. So this makes it easier to get to. Lastly, this is from my strawberry patch. These are all the strawberries that have been eaten or starting to rot. So we did a big clearing out of the strawberry patch this week. I'm going to add a little bit of bedding on top of that, just because of how much I'm feeding. This is by far the biggest feeding I've ever given this bin, almost by double. Like just the food scraps would be a big feeding, and then I gave them all the strawberries too. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to cover it up. And then lastly, I'm going to cover it up in the blanket so that the moisture stays in. And then I'm going to leave the finished castings outside of the blanket so that it dries up. So I can, the stuff that I want them to stay and eat gets covered. The stuff that I want to dry out so I can harvest stays uncovered. And that's how I do it.